Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
I walk with the belief now that no matter how bad life gets, I will not let the darkness change my heart. Because if I let the negativity win, then whose life is it anymore? Is it mine, or is it what's happening to me? And I choose to be in control of my life and my happiness now. So yeah, no matter what happens to me, if more bad things happen to me in the future, I choose to not allow that darkness to change my heart. I will always fight for my heart to be good and to be good to other people. And when you feel like life is getting so dark, things are so stressful, it's too hard to adult anymore, I always tell myself that whether you're religious or not, having true faith is keeping hope when all logic tells you that it's unreasonable.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA.
Hi, this is Jake Eberly, the producer of the Bonus Babies podcast, and today Jayne Amelia speaks with Chrisie Morris. Chrisie was about 1 year old when she was removed from her home because her parents were having difficulty with drug addiction. She went back into their home when she was 4 years old and lived with them until she was about 10, and then things dramatically changed. But we'll let her tell that story. Here's Chrisie Morris.
Hey, Chrisie Morris. Hey.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me.
No, good morning. Good morning. I'm so glad you're on it, really. So I saw you on a TV interview, and you were so poised and so together and so contained. Is that how you felt, or were you just putting on a really smooth persona?
It is partly how I felt. But I was really anxious to be on live TV. That was my first time doing something like that ever. But yeah, usually me being poised and stuff is what I put on when I have to do big things like that.
Well, it worked. You looked gorgeous, you sounded gorgeous, you spoke gorgeously. It was really great. I will put that link in the show notes so people can see, and also anything else that that you want or that you come upon. But let's just get to it. Tell me a little bit about your family of origin, who you are, where you're from, what you're about.
Yeah, so I am California born and raised, and I also make the joke that I've never left. I've never been able to travel much, but yeah, California, born and raised in LA in North Hollywood. I come from a very, very small family, and so I lived with my parents, and I have two sisters and a brother as well. And then things got kind of complicated from there. I jumped around from living with my parents, and then went into the foster system very early as an infant, which I don't remember, but it was a few years until my parents' rights got reinstated, and then jumped around to live with my dad's sister as well. For a few years, lived back with my parents until we went back into the foster care system again, and then I was placed again with my dad's sister and lived with her till about high school. Graduated high school and then lived with my other sister went to college, and then kind of fast forward to just like living independently now. So it's definitely been a real roller coaster of hopping around between a lot of people.
Yeah, lots of twists and turns for sure. So, have you been able to ask about your records of when you first went into care as an infant? Have you thought about that?
Actually, no, that's a good reminder, because I should be able to reach out to my old social worker and maybe see if she could kind of pull the first records. I ended up, being legally adopted by my aunt, so they didn't. I believe they gave my aunt the case file of everything from when we were older. But yeah, I've never like looked back into it to like look at how everything looks like on the legal side of things and in the court records.
Right. And then, of course, also what's missing with those, what's the problem with the court records is that they very rarely have the child's point of view. They often don't even have any quotes from the child. They have interviews maybe, but it'll be like the child said she was happy or something, like super brief. Don't really give. I mean, I think that should change now because we have cell phones. People can make a record of things, and you can put that digital record into a court record. It's not just everything still, from what I can see, is just manual notes that are compiled for court documents. And that just seems so antiquated to me. But anyway, hopefully that will change. Let me ask you then, your parents lost you, but they got you back. So they must have worked really hard that first time around to get you. Do you have any sense of that at all?
Right. Yeah. So, from what I was like told the first time around, my parents, unfortunately, they always struggled with a drug addiction. And yeah, so that first time around, they were new parents, like not expecting. They had my brother, had my sister, and then had my other sister, Desiree. And they actually gave Desiree to my aunt and uncle because they thought that they would not be able to take care of 3 children. But alas, they got pregnant again and had me, which thankfully I am here. But yeah, so with their drug addiction, it was my dad's sister again who just saw things were getting really bad. We weren't being taken care of and decided to make the call. So they did work really hard because I think, just looking back on everything now and where I'm at now, I think my parents, they always really wanted to be good parents. I remember my dad, he was always saying like, I only ever like dreamed of really being a dad. But I think the problem was that they were just really flawed people and they just didn't know how to be a good person first before they could be parents. So, that first time around, we were so young. They did have to go to court-ordered rehab. They did that each for about like a year or so. And me, I was taken as like an infant, a baby, maybe 1 year old. And then I didn't live with my parents again until I was about 4 or 5. So that was kind of how the first time went. And things were good for a few years after that. But it was really the next turning point was when I was 10 and my mom wanted to divorce my dad. And then that kind of came as a shock to me because I was so young and I didn't really understand what that would mean, that like mommy's leaving now. And no one really wanted to explain that to me. And they kind of lied to me, which I wish they hadn't. I wish they had just told me the truth, but they had told me, oh, well, mommy and daddy are fighting about bills. So mommy's just going to leave for a little while and then she's going to come back. And I think that's probably the worst thing they could have told me because I kept thinking, mom's going to come back. Like it'll be a month or 2, mom's going to come back. And I remember actually it was my sister. She was like, how come you're not upset? And I was like, well, like I understand kind of what bills are, like that it's hard. But mom's going to come back. And she's like, she's not going to come back. Like, and then that's kind of where in my mind, it kind of just goes into like a really dark period of time where that caused my dad to relapse. And my brother had turned 18. And so my brother didn't want to deal with it. And left to live with my dad's sister. And my other sister that was still living with us, she was around 16, had a high school boyfriend at the time, and just tried to get away as much as possible, and I would too. Things just started to change so suddenly, and I was just so young, 11, 12. So those years of being 10 to 13 when I lived with my dad was just like a dark period of lots of like anxiety and confusion and depression. And I didn't know any better. I didn't think, like, I was like, things are just different now, and I guess this is just how it has to be. So I was alone like those 3 years with my dad, and he was struggling again with his drug addiction, which was getting steadily worse and worse. I went through a lot of emotional abuse, and I would see my dad's sister, and I would go visit on weekends and summers, and I would cry, and I'd be like, I don't want to come back home. And they always kind of knew something was going on because my dad had the addiction in the past, but they just never really stepped up. And to this day, I don't know why they didn't intervene earlier, knowing that I was like alone and that's what he was dealing with. Because there was just a lot of times I just remember like there was months like without food. I wasn't eating. I was so tiny and weak, and I was going to school hungry, and I would ask my other friends at school, like, hey, do you have 50 cents? So sometimes like all I would eat was like maybe like a cookie at school that a friend gave me. And then when I came home, my dad would buy like Gatorades, but Gatorades for himself. And then when he was in the room, I would try to like sneak a sip of the drink and, try to not make it noticeable that there was any missing. And when you deal with someone who, he was using methamphetamine, they are very paranoid and schizoid almost and stuff. So I just remember other times where it would be a school night, but I'm waking up in the middle of the night because he thinks people are looking through the windows, and he's just paranoid about other things and just very hostile, very angry, very aggressive. And then also he's grieving because the love of his life, who he was with for like 12 years, suddenly like up and left him for another man. And all of this just really like made me become the parent. And while I was being neglected, I also had to step up and care for him. And so a lot of the times how it really felt was that I was just kind of a bird in a cage and almost like enslaved to like take care of this person who really should have been taking care of me the whole time, and no one else. It's really a shame like that. I felt like my other family kind of knew what was going on. And, when it came to me being in 8th grade, my grandma came to stay with us, and she knew we were going to almost be evicted because he hadn't been paying rent. And my grandma was not going to, help him out and give him any more money. So she said, like, I'm going to take Chrissie back to your sister. She shouldn't stay here. And the move also happened very suddenly. I was at school. I got a note. I guess my aunt had called the school, and I got the note, kind of like a telegram in a funny way, so long ago. And on the note, it said, "Don't walk home. I'm coming to pick you up from school." I was like, oh, something must have happened, And then my aunt picked me up from school, and I went to her house with just my backpack and my clothes. Later on, we went back to like get some stuff, but yeah, and that's how I ended up living with my aunt for the rest of 8th grade year and all the way until I graduated high school. And because my dad was so upset that basically everyone had left him, my mom had left, my brother had left, my sister had left technically because she was like staying with her boyfriend at 16. And then I was the last one, and he just really did not want me to go. I was his baby. I'm the youngest out of the family. and he felt like everything was being ripped away from him. So he made a lot of threats that were not okay at the time. And that's what kind of triggered my family saying, should we just go through child services again? But I think what is so important to me and my story about being a foster youth is because my story is really about being placed with family. And I think outside people who don't understand much about the system would think like that is the better thing. But in my experience, it's almost just as worse, like, because it's experiencing like, okay, I'm with family, and the family's telling you like, oh, if you went to foster homes, you would be more abused. Like, bad things will happen to you. You won't be with good people. You'll be alone. You'll be torn away from your siblings. And I love my siblings. Like, I would die for my siblings, like, without hesitation. I love them so much, but it's the rest of my family that I just really struggle with. So I don't know if it was much better. I don't know if that's not my lived experience to be in foster homes, but it is my experience to have been neglected by a literal family who is like supposed to be the ones taking care of you. So that was really unfortunate.
Let me just ask you, though, if you can go back when you were with your dad and you're basically starving and really neglected. There was no adult who noticed. There was nobody you could go to who you trusted, like your teacher or a counselor or a coach, and say, hey, things are not good at home. Was there no one, or did you just decide not to do it because you were ashamed or you didn't think it would work, or what? Do you remember?
Yeah, at the time, I think it was because when I was younger, it was so beat into my head, the saying, what happens at home stays at home. And that was kind of just always just like beat into our heads. And when I went to school, it was more like, I want to go to school and forget what's happening at home. So when I would hang out with my friends, like, honestly, like, no one really talked about their home life. So that's why I was so young. Like, I didn't understand that, like, this is happening to me at home and I feel not okay and I shouldn't be hungry and I don't want to keep getting yelled at and said that I'm retarded because like I dropped a dish, or, you know, I made too loud of a noise, or I wasn't doing something on time. And yeah, none of my friends really talked about what their kind of home lives were like. So I didn't know it could be better. I just thought, this is what I have to put up with now. And in regards to talking to like teachers or coaches or anything, like, I think honestly, they just didn't notice. I mean, I've always had a very like, you know, my family used to call me skinny mini because I always had this really tall, like slender frame and body build. So, I mean, I don't know if, you know, no teacher wanted to assume or imply anything or like ask any questions. Actually, what irritated me when I was in 8th grade was because I spent those years in middle school, 6th to 8th, dealing with this. And when I was in 8th grade and I made the change of, you know, my address and everything, and I was living with my aunt, the school administration had figured that out and understood now what was going on. And one administrator lady, which kind of always had a bone to pick with me, I really was not fond of her. I did not like her at the time. She was just always trying to nitpick my dress code or something like that. I just remember her just not being a nice woman. I'm walking into school one day in 8th grade and she stops me and she's like, how are you doing? Like, is everything okay? And like, she was just trying to like, you know, oh, I didn't know like that was going on. But, you know, I kind of just brushed her off because I was like, I understand, you know, like maybe at the time you're just trying to do your job, but I just felt like she was always unnecessarily mean to the kids. And that's where I think like it's important for adults to understand that how can a child know to speak up? You know, if something's like, if you even think something's wrong, I think it's always better to just like try to ask, because maybe the kid is scared to come up. In my case, I was told literally not to say anything. And I also didn't know any better. And then suddenly this woman who, you know, it's kind of like that saying, like, be nice to people you see in the street, you know, have good customer service, because you don't know what their day was like before they walked into the store, right? And so as kids in school, like, you don't know what their home life is like. And then here you are as an adult, like, kind of just like nitpicking them about their dress code or something. It's silly. So, that's what, I think that's what also was unfortunate, was I felt surrounded by these adults that, I didn't think I could talk to. I was told not to talk to. And, like, even my family, my dad's sister not intervening earlier when I think she should have. I really felt alone, and like no one was going to come save me. And that was just what I had to tolerate and what I had to put up with.
And then you didn't even have, you couldn't be straight with your social worker either, right? What happened with that? Because you were told to lie, and you did, really, because you thought that's my only choice.
Right. Yeah. When I was living with my aunt, why that situation was so awful for me was because we were living with my aunt. My dad has two sisters, so it was both aunts. It was my aunt's children. It was my grandma. My brother, like, as I mentioned, he was 18, and he left at the time to live with the same aunt. And so there was about 7 of us, like, living all together in a 1-bedroom apartment. And then me and my sister also had to come in and live there. So
Wow.
when we felt like it was the better decision to make the call to CPS, my brother was aged out, but me and my sister had to go through the process again. So we had a social worker coming every month. We had our case manager, and she was lovely. She was such a sweet woman. And I don't put anything past her, because we really did everything in our power to cover up everything that was happening. So I don't hold anything against her for, like, not asking more questions or anything like that. What would happen is, like, we're not supposed to have 7 people in a 1-bedroom apartment or anything like that.
Exactly. There's actually laws against it. Yeah. I mean, for the care of children. Yes.
Yeah, correct. And, my aunt was a heavy chain smoker, and you're not supposed to smoke in the house either, which she did all the time. The walls were, like, yellow from, like, how much both my aunts actually were chain smokers. So we would always try to, like, scrub the house, clean it. We would tell everyone in the house to leave for, like, the 2 hours of the visit, make the beds all nice, put away, hide the other people's belongings, so it looked like it was just me and Sonia's belongings. Sonia's my sister. And we had all these beds. We had, like, a bed in the living room and 3 beds in the bedroom, but we had to pretend the bed in the living room was, I don't know what we said, like, just to lay down or something. But in reality, my sister was sleeping on the couch, and all the other people were sleeping in beds in the bedroom. And I had to sleep in between my aunt and my cousin in one of the beds. So we would lie to the social worker, and we would tell her, no, we're happy here. Yes, we're getting everything we need, but we weren't. And I still am frustrated to this day with that same aunt, because I think her heart was in the right place. She felt like it was all in her to take care of her brother's kids and kind of, like, hold our little family together of all of our cousins and everything. But at the same time, she was also failing us. Like, I begged her so many times to make, like, a college fund for me, because when you start to take care of a foster child, you receive child alimony every month.
It's a monthly allotment, but I'm not sure what the term was when you were in the system. But there's essentially a stipend that is awarded to the caregiver every month, depending on the child's needs and also what level they're at. Yeah, so you asked her to put some money aside, at least, to make sure you had funds for college, and she never did that?
Yeah, never did. I asked, like, all of 9th grade. I asked all of 10th grade. I think in 11th grade, we got into a huge screaming match, and I was a very, very timid little girl, like, so quiet. They called me the golden child as well, which is just other stuff I can get into that has just left more long-term effects now. But about that fight in particular, it was because I felt like she was getting all this money from the people. Like, not only did we have 7 people living together, but all my cousins who were adults, older, and could work, she was asking everybody for rent money. And she had her own full-time job. So what was also frustrating to me was because all the money was going to a pill addiction that both my aunts had. And they had prescribed medication, but they were always taking more than they were supposed to. And just always saying it was for the stress, and then they're also heavy, heavy chain smokers and heavy marijuana usage. So in my head, I was like, okay, I went from one home with my dad where, okay, using meth is much worse. But then I went to another home where people, okay, they're kind of functioning, but they're all drug addicts as well in their own way. So in my head, I don't have a family member, other than my siblings who are not using drugs. And I didn't ever feel comfortable because everything was always rat packed. All of our storage and everything was piled up. It was such a tight living space. And then on top of that, I also was still not fed. So I'm like almost kind of giggling because it felt ridiculous to me that, or at least it's ridiculous to me now in hindsight. At the time, it was just a struggle and depressing to deal with. But yeah, that's what was so frustrating. I saw this wonderful, such sweet social worker woman every month. And on the inside, I just wanted to tell her, like, I'm not eating as much as I should. Yes, she buys me clothes here and there. Yes, I have like school items to go to school, but it was such bare minimum. I just wanted to tell her, like, it's annoying. Like, we live here with so many people. Like, it's, most of the time dirty. We would just clean when they would come. We had a roach infestation that we were dealing with. And then we didn't know till years later, actually, there was also mold in the walls from rain damage. And then later, when the wall started to break apart, we realized. But yeah, everything with all of those 7 people was just stacked up high. It kind of looked almost like a hoarder's house, And again, I went to school and I never talked about that. I kind of hid it all.
How about your mom, Chrissie? Because your mom she was not in the picture, and why not?
Yeah. So when she divorced my dad or separated from him when I was 10, she left to Sacramento, and she came back a few months later and maybe like the next year. She also, I didn't learn this till later, she wanted to take my sister and I with her to Sacramento. And she was negotiating with my dad that, like, I want to take the kids because, I know you're using again, and I don't think it's good for them to stay here. But the issue is where she had left to in Sacramento was with another boyfriend, and the living situation was not good up there either. There wouldn't have been room really for 2 more kids, and I believe the boyfriend at the time, like, did not want us, like, because he just felt like, well, I'm not going to be a stepfather. So that's why I stayed with my dad, and my mom had left. But I never got to see her much until it was maybe like my brother's graduation and then my sister's graduation. She would come down like just for the graduation and then have to leave again because she didn't really get along with my dad's sister. And she tried calling and trying to be there, but it was little things like my dad's sister would, I didn't know this at the time, but my dad's sister would call my mom again after she called me and say, don't call Chrissie, because when you call Chrissie, she just gets upset and she cries. And, you're just making things worse. Like, you decided to leave, so you should just be gone and like let them move on. And my mom's heart was kind of like broken. And I understand that a little bit more now because she was suffering emotionally being in a relationship with my father to the point of where, she felt like she had to make that hard decision of leaving her kids. There's still pain there. I feel like I never got to know my mom. To this day, I still talk to her. I'm still in contact with her, but it feels more like I have this connection as my heart and my body knows that this is my mother who carried me and like birthed me, but I still feel like I don't know her as a person. And I was kind of robbed of that experience. And that was hard for me. My aunt kind of wanted to be my mother, but we were just such in conflict because what I really wanted, like things like the college fund, she just never did. She just always did kind of the bare minimum, like what was good enough. And, you know, oh, when you go off to college, you'll figure it out and like you'll have scholarships and programs and everything will be fine. But it's like, if you truly wanted to take care of me and care about my future, you would have done something like that to really set me up for success. And that was the problem, was all of these adults in my life, they only wanted to do the bare minimum. They just cared about themselves, trying to survive the next day, but they didn't care for us and our future and like actually setting us up for success.
How do you feel about that now, Chrissie?
It's still I maybe don't have a good word for it, but it's still hurtful. I think when people decide to have kids, you should care about the kid and their future and what they hope to do and what they dream to do. You shouldn't just, oh, they have clothes on their back and some food and they'll just figure it out. Like that's good enough. Like that is, to me, not truly caring for a child. And I think now that I'm older, I just felt very fed up by all of that. You know, I've tried to find a lot of peace in it. My father unfortunately actually passed away this past December. So this year for me has been a lot of reflection about what my story is, about how I feel with my father and with my aunts as well. And I feel like I have now found some peace because I've been able to turn my life around with the help of other programs and just really staying dedicated to school. But thinking back on it, you know, sometimes I felt, oh, I can't even really claim that I was a foster youth. I feel almost like ashamed to say, oh, I'm a foster youth because I was fortunate enough to stay with family. But when I think about my story, yeah, it's still heavy on my heart that, yes, I got to stay with family, but what good was it if I turned 18 and I had nothing, like, and I was going to be homeless, you know, like, because my family at 18, when I graduated high school, they all wanted to live and move to Vegas, and I didn't want to, you know, so what good was it staying with family if I was going to turn 18 and have nothing, just like how other people who don't get to stay with their family turn 18 and age out and then also have nothing. They're not set up for college. They have all this trauma. None of that is good.
Yeah, it's the same thing, Chrissie. Yeah. It's and even if you were with family, you weren't well cared for. You didn't have the relationship and home life with your biological parents that a lot of kids have, which does set them up for success. And the fact that you're talking about your college funds yourself when you're a young teenager, was there anybody else who went to college? Because that's pretty amazing. Like kids saying, "Hey, are you putting money aside for me?" How did you get that idea?
Yeah, with school often felt like my escape, like away from everything that I was dealing with at home. And it was my older sister, Sonia, actually, that told me, you know, like, no matter what, like, just do good in school, because, you know, if you do good in school and you get good grades now, you'll have a good college application and you can get scholarships and, you know, you can live in the dorms. So actually, when I was about 11 or so, when I was living with my dad and things were getting really bad and I was living alone with him, I just kind of made this vow to myself that no matter what would happen, I would care about my education so that I could get somewhere and be somebody. And if it took those next like 7 years of living through kind of that dark period with my father to turn 18 and go off to college and live in a dorm and finally get away from him, then I would tolerate the abuse for 7 years. And that's what I was telling myself at like 10 years old, that I thought that was my only way out, was like, I have to tolerate this basically until I can like get to college. So I'm going to get good grades and hopefully get like a full ride scholarship or something. At the time, I thought that literally was like my only option.
Yeah. So you made a promise to yourself, just get through this, and you can have a different life.
Yeah. I didn't know how life would change. Everything changed so suddenly. Adults didn't really want to like be straight with me. Maybe they thought they were doing me a favor because I was so young, but I always felt that way. I always felt a little bit more ahead of my age, a little bit more mature. But as a little girl, like I was just a little artist. Like I cared about art, and I cared about making things, and I cared about life, and I cared about animals, and I had this empathy and this love for creation. And I think one beautiful light in my childhood was actually, my dad telling me, I'm so happy that you're an artist, because there's no artist in my family at all. And he told me recently, before he passed away, he said, I just want you to be the best little artist you can be. And that just means the world to me, because in these last couple years of his life, my dad really tried to get his stuff together and turn his life around. And we are really working on our relationship. And I think the biggest thing actually that he had done to amend things was like, he actually deeply apologized to me and acknowledged the neglection and the abuse that was going on at the time that him and I lived together. And that made a world of a difference for me.
Yeah. So you were able to forgive him, or you're working on that?
I did. Let me put it this way. I did find it in my heart to forgive the person that he is now. I don't forgive the person that he was back then. And I just hug that little girl now who had to suffer through that. So I don't forgive the person in those years that decided to do what he did, but the person that he was these last years of his life, just trying to get his stuff together and make his amends is who I forgive. And actually, I wish I had more time with. I think that is also the twisted thing of life, is that your children will always love you so much. They just look at you and they love you, and it doesn't really matter who you are or what you do. We're looking at you and we still love you. And it's just that innocence, and that purity of like, we just want to feel safe and loved. And you as an adult with a full conscious mind is deciding to just disregard that and like not care for that child. So I have been working on that now. I've been trying to still get into therapy to just unpack a lot of other stuff that's been going on. But when I was younger, I just tried to focus on my education, and I naturally enjoyed learning. I really loved art. I naturally enjoyed learning, and was really interested in all of the different kinds of subjects. So when it came to asking my aunt for that college education, it was because I still had that vow to myself when I was 10 that like my life will get better once I can get away from all these crazy people.
Right. And you have gotten away, and you have made a life for yourself. So please talk about what's happening with you now. I know you've been part of some really cool programs, including Ready to Succeed, and I recently found out also Better Youth. Actually, Sid is on the podcast in the second season. She's a great lady. You were part of that too, right?
Yes. I love those programs. A lot of amazing highlights for me. It was after I turned 18, I lived with my sister and my uncle, and I went to Pasadena City College, where I achieved 3 associate degrees with a 4.0 GPA.
Wow.
And then I went off and I transferred to Cal State University Long Beach, where I'm still at now. I'm a rising senior trying to finish my Bachelor of Fine Art degree in illustration for pre-production, which is visual development. It's a lot of concept work for animated films, essentially, which I still have been maintaining my 4.0, knock on wood.
Gosh, really? Wow.
So a lot of honors rolls, president list. what has really made a huge, amazing change in my life has been both of those programs, Ready to Succeed and Better Youth. And they really just fill my heart up with joy, because my experience my whole life was just this little girl who just wants to make pretty pictures, just wants to make art. No one's taking care of her. No one's asking her about her dream or anything. I go off to college. I still don't feel like I have my voice. I don't even know if I should be in college for art, because they keep saying I'm going to be a starving artist. And then here I had first found Better Youth. And what was like so amazing about Better Youth was these were people, adults and my peers alike, who knew the background I was coming from, who understood where I had come from without me ever even saying it. It was just like known. And it felt like,
Yeah, it's unspoken. I know. Like they can just feel it off you, right?
yeah.
I know that. I've seen that.
And it just felt like such a good, safe space to be creative. And I love Sid, because Sid had a big hand in just telling me, you know, I think you're going to be a leader. Before I even felt like I was ready, that before I even felt like I was someone who could be poised enough on KTLA, she saw something in me. And I also love, Sean Jackson as well, who runs the Aim and Inspire program there at Better Youth, that allows us to do these creative projects.
Yeah, he's great. I love Sean.
Yeah. So Better Youth felt like my safe space to be creative and like truly find my voice, because they let me discover like what I could do, like, and like see for myself like my impact and like my potential. So I will always remember that. They felt like the first adults who were like, what do you want to do? Like, your dreams are important and you already have it inside of you, is like what they would always say. And that just completely changed my perspective, because it was like one of the first times I felt like, wow, like someone cares and my dreams don't feel big. They feel achievable now. And then I found Ready to Succeed as well, which I think they really helped with the kind of technical aspect of like really trying to like break into an industry and career. So it was a lot of like interview coaching and mentorship and resume building and, you know, the practical skills of like trying to get into your industry. So Ready to Succeed helped me get into my career in entertainment, which is a huge step for anybody. It is so hard to get into like entertainment. And as an artist, that's terrifying to like want to dream that big. But Ready to Succeed helped me land an internship at DreamWorks the beginning of this year. And I took that spring internship. I was terrified, but I love how this has changed my life. It actually makes me so happy as well, because when I got the DreamWorks internship in spring, that actually was my last phone call with my dad. And I told him, I was like, Dad, I got accepted to DreamWorks. And his excitement was so much more excited than I was. And he was just like so happy, like basically screaming. And he was just like, I know you're going to be okay. He's like, I know you're going to go and do amazing things and they're going to love you. And you're just going to be awesome. He's like, that's your foot in the door and it's a huge company and you're just going to take off. And I love that that's one of my last memories, because it just means the world to me. So I also did a summer internship at DreamWorks, and that went amazing. And I have amazing.
You're the dream girl. You're the dream girl. Chrisie.
Thank you so
wow.
much. It's really been a joy working for that company, because I think they're also people who just put kindness first. And that's just one of my major values, is to just be kind to others. Like, you don't know what people are going through.
Okay, I'm really glad you're asking about this, because that was going to be my next question. I want to talk about values and what does that word mean to you, and is that something you think about? And the first one is kindness for you.
Yeah, kindness and compassion, I would say. I think a lot of my friends and industry people who have come to know me and understand me would probably say that I am a compassionate person. I've just always felt that way in my heart. The way that I think about it is I just really value life. I really value all life and creation. And I think maybe that's why I was born with this talent to create and bring things to life. So I just have such a deep love for, the symbiotic relationship of how all these people, all these humans, we're here together on this planet and we can connect with so many people. And like that connection is such a beautiful thing to me, to be able to exist in such a big, vast world that we don't know if it's even bigger beyond our little planet. And in this moment, in this time, I'm able to connect with someone else who has a different background, different experiences, different values. And above all that, like maybe learn something. And if I'm even connecting with someone, if I'm connecting with you in this podcast in this like finite amount of time that like we have in this lifetime, like it's special to me because we don't know how much time we have to like live this life that we have, but we're choosing to connect with others. And why not make that kind? Why not make that a happy memory? Why not do something that is going to make that moment in time for that person a little bit better? And that's just kind of how I choose to walk through life. Because when you come from a background of pain and trauma and suffering, and people looked at you and were not nice to you, I have felt so many times that I cried so much and like just wasn't able to truly genuinely smile, that now when I walk through life, what I value is, can I make someone smile today? Can I just maybe do something small, because that might help change their life. That might be something that they're looking for, that they need. So having gone through that kind of pain and trauma, I wouldn't want that for anybody else. And I will never be someone who is going to perpetuate that kind of negativity. Then that's why I love art. That's why I love animation. I want to be in entertainment, and I want to make films that inspire people to just be better people, because I love the saying that if you can change anyone for the better, then choose to change yourself for the better, and the world will be a better place.
Wow, Chrissie, that is so cool. It's so good to hear. I'd heard how wonderful you are, and you're really living up to the hype. I have one more question I ask all my guests, and that is, what is the one thing that no one would ever know about you unless you told them?
Yeah, I would have to take a second to think about it. Something that nobody would know. Because I often feel like I'm actually a really open book.
I had one guest that told me she didn't like asparagus.
Oh, something so like...
Well, ideally, it would be something that comes from inside your heart or your head. And if you like, you can think about it and send me a voice memo. Sometimes guests have done that. Like, they can't do it in the moment, but they can do it after. They say, oh, this is what I should have answered.
I think I do have a pretty good answer. It's kind of like people do know this about me, but I think they don't know why. Yeah. So something about me that I don't think people would know, or if they do, they know that I really love stuffed animals. And I have this thing, with collecting stuffed animals. I currently have like 50 of them in my room. I really love plushies and soft things. But even though if people know this about me and give them to me as gifts and stuff, I love that. I think what people will never know unless they did ask was why I love the plushies so much. But to me, it's just really about the comfort. And when I was little and kind of going through all of these terrible things around me, I would just like hold on to my stuffed animals, my little bear or something. And I honestly felt like that bear was like protecting me. And that's just something that I never let go and probably will never let go. And you can put a stuffy in my coffin for because I will never let that go. So where that comes from is just this.
That is so
Yeah.
cool. That is so cool. It's so wonderful. And so, I don't know what the word is. It's so simple and real, especially because I can imagine as a kid, you seeking comfort and only finding it in a stuffed bear or a stuffed penguin or whatever. I actually just recently gave a big stuffed teddy bear, like a life-size one, to my casa kiddo because she's afraid to sleep at night, and I called him Derek the protector bear after my cousin Derek, who is a very protected kind of guy. I mean, he is a protector. And so she says it's helping her sleep.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I felt like, the more stuffies I had, the more my bed felt like a safe space. Like I was surrounded on all angles. And I would just cuddle it very close to my heart because it just felt like, like I was mentioning, I have this like deep love for just life in general. And I would inject life into my animals. They weren't just, they weren't dormant. They were their own character inside of their, kind of like Toy Story. But yeah, to me, they're all very, very special. And that's why I still have so many to this day, and I will have many, many more.
Thank you so much, Chrissie. Thank you for sharing all this today. So is there anything else you'd like to say for people to hear?
Yeah, I think I just want to say to all the listeners, that it's really, really great when there's cases like mine where, you can walk from such a hard background and be resilient enough, and then eventually find people who are going to lift you up. And then now you're able to, have these success stories of graduating college and going off to amazing internships. But it's really, I think, just doing your best to be kind to others. Like if you see something, saying something, intervening early. But even if you can't, even if you don't know what that person is going through, it's just really about being compassionate and really putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And, I just honestly, I walk with the belief now that no matter how bad life gets, I will not let the darkness change my heart. Because if I let the negativity win, then whose life is it anymore? Is it mine, or is it what's happening to me? And I choose to be in control of my life and my happiness now. So yeah, no matter what happens to me, if more bad things happen to me in the future, I choose to not allow that darkness to change my heart. I will always fight for my heart to be good and to be good to other people. And when you feel like life is getting so dark, things are so stressful, it's too hard to adult anymore, I always tell myself that whether you're religious or not, having true faith is keeping hope when all logic tells you that it's unreasonable, that there will be a better day. You have to hold on to that hope, even if it's illogical, that there will be a better day. And honestly, that was how I made it through my childhood. It was irrational. Every logic told me, oh, this is what's happening to you. This is traumatic. This is bad. This is dark. It was logical for me to give up hope. But that to me is what true faith is holding on to hope even when it's illogical. And I promise there will be a better day if you want it.
Thank you, Chrissie. Yay on you. Yay on you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Chrissie. I'm kind of blown away here. You are an enlightened human being. I want to touch on something that you said earlier about your parents not having the knowledge to care for themselves, much less care for their children. And how your father kept trying, but kept on getting sucked into his drug addiction. But he really did care about you. So my point is that I don't think there should be a stigma for parents to get an education on how to raise their children. I mean, our parents didn't always do it right. So there's nothing wrong with learning best practices on raising children. There's nothing wrong with learning positive discipline techniques that don't include anger or violence. So I want to encourage any parents out there that feel like they're lost and don't know what to do to go to a program that can educate them even just a little bit, because there are programs and resources out there that can help you, that can guide you in raising your kids if you don't know what to do. There's nothing wrong with that. It just makes a better place for all of us. You can Google it and you can find Child Welfare Information Gateway at childwelfare.gov, the UCLA Parenting Program for Children and Adolescents, CEBC, Parent Training Programs, the Power of Parenting Program, Families First. So there are lots of resources and lots of ways to get the knowledge that you need to raise your children to be the best that they can be, which in turn will make you the best that you can be. Thank you, Chrissie, for the inspiration. So next week, our guests are Rami Lasali and Patrick McCabe, who founded Ready to Succeed, which has supported college-bound students impacted by foster care, or scholars as they call them, by helping them into school, helping them stay in school, and flourish after school with resources, relationships, with passionate professionals, career coaching, and more. I'm looking forward to that. So join us next week for Rami Lasali and Patrick McCabe. Thank you for listening, and be well. If you or someone you know is harming themselves or thinking about harming themselves, go to crisistextline.org. If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposto. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at bonusbabies.org. See you next time.